Greedy stepmom stole my inheritance and my house, so I nuked her career and life. Bye, Felicia. My mom died giving birth to me, so I never knew her. She looks pretty in pictures. Dad says she was a good woman, and I believe him. He was a good dad, and raised me by himself with the help of my aunt until I was 11. My aunt has her own kids that are a few years older than me, but we were all friends growing up and still are, which includes my aunt. Like my mom, my aunt is a good woman. My dad worked crazy long hours to provide for me. He owned his own convenience store. He was manager and cashier for most of the day and had one other employee as his helper. I was just a kid, but would also help at the store after school, sweeping and stocking shelves. For the longest time, my dad's helper was a Chinese guy, but then he had to quit because he had to take care of his ailing parents in China. So my dad replaced him with a white guy, who did okay for a while, but then he graduated college and moved on. Finally, my dad hired a Chinese woman to be his helper, and this woman would eventually become his second wife and my stepmom. I will call her Barbara, though of course her name isn't actually Barbara. Barbara was only 15 years older than me, so she was a lot younger than my dad, who was 44, and she was like 26. She also didn't speak Chinese the same dialect at first, which was inconvenient for our convenience store because we lived in a Chinese part of town where most of the customers were Chinese Mandarin, and only once in a while white or black people come in, so her English wasn't such an advantage. Barbara was nice to me at first, so I thought she was a good person. I was not yet 12 when they got married, and she moved into our house. From what I know about her, her family is quite wealthy in China, and they paid for a nice wedding, and they all came to America for it. My dad was the sort of guy never to let anyone pay his way, though, so he kept on working like a maniac every day. Once they got married, Barbara changed, at least toward me. She was no longer big sis like she tried to portray herself when she and my dad were dating, where she treated me as a peer, but now she was super strict and controlling. She no longer let me help out around the shop like before. It's not like Cinderella where the mom would force the kid to do all this work, but she did tend to isolate me from my father. Over the next few years, she convinced my dad to sponsor all sorts of her relatives and friends to come over from China to live in America. He would set these people up with businesses because, even though my dad wasn't rich, he was very bright and knew how to make money. They would open little restaurants, dry cleaners, cell phone repair shops, things like that. Pretty much all the little foreign mom and pop shops you see in any small town, my dad helped make those things, except the owners were Chinese guys. When I was 17, my dad developed lung cancer due to smoking heavily ever since he was 13. He died only 2 years later at only 52. When I was a kid, I always had in mind to one day take over my dad's store when he retired. Now that I was 19, I was still too young to sell liquor, but I thought surely Barbara will let me work in the store now that my dad was gone. No such luck. She had one of her adult cousins take over the store, and the guy hired only his own friends and family to work in it. So, the store my dad built from nothing was no longer part of my life. Barbara also had my dad fix his will so that she got almost all of his money, which again, although he wasn't Bill Gates rich, was several hundreds of thousands of dollars. I didn't really care about the money. Barbara can have it, but it still sucks she got all his money and her family's already rich. I think she was just using my dad to transport her clan from China to America. But that's just my theory. All the money in the world cannot to pay to bring my dad back, and I'd rather have that than cash. But I digress. However, after saying all that, I will admit my dad set aside a small trust for me that was enough to put me through junior college. Also, the minute I turned 18, Barbara threw me out of the house my dad bought and paid for with his hard work. "This is not a place for you, you go now, bye-bye." She owned it because she was his wife. And now that my dad was dead, Barbara could move her new boyfriend into the house in his place. Her new boyfriend was a big, fat scumbag from Taiwan, who from what I hear was big-shot mobster in his home country. But in America, he just played mahjong all day and lived off his wife's money in my dad's house. Honestly, I think he was hanging out in America to avoid gang trouble in Asia. Also, I think my stepmom got with him because he has connections in China and Taiwan, and maybe some fraud is going on. Before I got kicked out of my dad's house, my stepmom used my dad's money to invest in a couple of apartment buildings. I eventually heard that she was renting out rooms to various traffickers, and basically they were bordellos. This was all stuff I found out later, along with the news that she not only made big money off rents, but the traffickers were giving her a kickback on money they earned. I will say this for Barbara. She's a very beautiful woman physically, and it's easy to see why my father was attracted to her. Though if I think of her as not my stepmom, she personally does nothing for me. She often got men to do what she wanted because she was pretty. I'm also quite certain that she gave them more than eye candy, but aside from one very important case, I cannot prove it. What was that case? Well, I moved in with my nice aunt, who sheltered me while I went to college for a degree in computer engineering. My smaller inheritance paid for a couple of years of school. My aunt was nice to me, and even though she was still taking care of her own children, she had one son who already married and had his own family, but 3 daughters who still lived at home and were unmarried. She didn't ask me for rent. Her own husband had passed away long ago, so I got to play man of the house, taking care of the yard and fixing things like cars and computers while I lived there. After a couple of years, I lose touch with Barbara and just concede that she won. I also got a job at a computer hobby store where I am soup upper, word, of computers to make them go fast. It's good experience, and though the money isn't so great, at least hey, it is some money and I am starting to make a name of myself in the world, or at least in our small city. When I say small city, I really do mean small city. And it is even smaller in sense that Chinese people in that city tend to live all in one part of it and everyone knows one another. Eventually, I meet my own girlfriend Kay, who is much the same age as me and going to school to be a nurse. After Kay and I am dating a few months, I start to meet her family. She knows about my living situation, that I live with my aunt and that I have a mean stepmom who threw me out of my dad's house. But I never said Barbara's real name before. So I meet Kay's family, and she has an older brother, Mike, who is about 26. Mike is Chinese like all of us, but he is very heavily tattooed, and he had spent some time in prison because he was a banger as a teenager and did time until he was early 20s. He worked for a landscaping company, cutting grass and all that. He is what we call in our neighborhood a cowboy, but I don't know how accurate that translates in English to what I am trying to say he is. Well, anyway, after coming to Kay's house and seeing him around a couple of times, Mike overhears me answer one of Kay's questions about my stepmom, and Barbara's name comes up. Mike is saying, "Oh, excuse me, May, hey, OP, did you say Barbara's real name?" In my neighborhood, everyone calls their little sister May, so I say, "Yeah, that's my stepmom." "Oh," he tells me, "no offense, OP, but I'm ing your stepmom. No way." So he describes how he does a lot of houses in my dad's old neighborhood, and while my stepmom's boyfriend is with his own friends playing mahjong, Mike, comes over and he and Barbara have sex without a condom because she wants a baby and is like now 36 and is wanting go fast and her boyfriend's sperm too slow. Evidently, Mike has sex with all sorts of women in the neighborhood, and outside of it too. He brags about all the white and black and Mexican ladies he also landscapes. I haven't really thought about my stepmom other than talking about stuff in the past, so it was interesting hearing what she was up to. I mean, other than ing my girlfriend's brother. Mike tells us that Barbara uses her apartment buildings as a giant cat house where pimps set up their women. Barbara never actually told him this, but he deduced it like an Asian thug version of Sherlock Holmes. He says that a lot of people he knew in prison got put in jail that way. Also, that my stepmom was running for a seat for the city council, playing up the fact that she was a hard-working woman of color, blah, 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 and had aspirations for even higher office. It's clear she wanted to make herself a little empire. Kay asks her brother if he would help us put my stepmom in jail. She had her account set up, so it was really hard to prove she actually knew exactly what her tenants were doing in her buildings. But anyway, if the buildings were shut down, it would at least hurt Barbara's cash flow, and it would put an end to at least some abuse of women. Mike said that he would have kept his mouth shut because he liked that my stepmom was basically showering him with money so that he could keep giving her the D. But since his little sister was asking for help, he was willing to forgo the money. I piped up and offered to pay him, even though no way I could pay as much as Barbara. He said, "It's fine, you don't need to pay me anything, but if you hurt my little sister, I'll cut your balls off." Deal. So our plan we came up with was that Mike would set up his cell phone in an out-of-sight place in Barbara's room while they had sex. Basically a sex tape without her knowledge. Mike didn't care about his reputation in America and had plans to leave the country again anyway and go back to China, as his own father had a business opportunity for him there. The idea of being in a porn didn't bother him at all. Having spent time in jail and also being part of a gang subculture, he also didn't have any trouble scoring drugs, and evidently he did these drugs with Barbara all the time in her house. So on the day he made a porn at her house, he also made sure to show that Barbara was doing drugs. He minimized his role so that it appeared that it was Barbara who scored the drugs and was offering them to him. He did make sure, at my suggestion, to have her say in natural conversation what day and year it was, and that this was her pass-away husband's house, and that her current boyfriend was playing mahjong at a friend's house. Furthermore, Mike added a special touch where, in the throes of sex, he made Barbara denounce her Taiwan boyfriend as a weakling and a fool, not a real man, that only Mike was capable of giving her an orgasm. Really hair-raising stuff, LOL. All of it was in Chinese, but that was okay as the audience would also be Chinese. Mike made sure that the video clearly showed Barbara's face. The video was obviously not a professionally made porn, so thankfully we did not have to actually see any clear private parts, but it was very obvious what was going on in the film. All told, the video was 20 minutes long. We edited it out most of the sex portions because those were unimportant, really. When I say we, I mean Mike and me, because of course Kay didn't want to look at her own brother in a porn. I didn't care to see Barbara either, and thankfully, I didn't really have to see any clear picture of her naked, though it was obviously her and she was obviously naked. We shaved the video down to those parts where it was clearly showing Barbara's face, her doing drugs, talking about drugs and offering them to Mike, her mentioning the date, and that this was her pass-away husband's highest, them in bed for a few seconds obviously doing it, and the funny part where she made fun of her Taiwanese boyfriend. The relevant video clip we made was slightly less than 10 seconds long. A few days later, Mike went to China to meet up with his parents. A week after that, as politics go, candidates often have to make speeches in front of audiences. And Barbara, running for a seat in the city council, was no different. Nobody really cares about city council meetings, except other politicans and the few dozen people who go to such things. Reading up on her quickly, I learned that Barbara was presenting herself as a woman of high character, a business owner who had set up more than a dozen successful businesses in the area for other immigrants. So basically stealing credit for my father's work. But back to boring political meetings. They're definitely snoozer, but if something interesting happens, such as the politician saying something Hitler would say, someone getting assassinated, or, I don't know, an attractive candidate suddenly, randomly appearing in a porn for all to see in real time, news travels fast. So on the day that Barbara was making her little speech in front of maybe 100 people at a local hotel conference room, the public was invited. Oh, look. Her boyfriend, the mahjong king, was there too, and all of Barbara's cousins that my dad had sponsored to America and set up for business were there too. Nobody took notice of the young guy in dark sunglasses and beanie sitting in the front row holding a backpack. Even more so because the room was darkened except for the stage. Barbara was going to be the fourth speaker out of maybe 6. While the first speaker made his speech, I silently slid a bazooka Bluetooth speaker out of my backpack and put it near the stage. Such a speaker is about 20 inches tall, 8 inches diameter, and when set to maximum can be quite loud. I tested it at home to make sure. Yep, it would do. As I predicted, the level of excitement of the first 3 speakers was like as entertaining as listening to Jessica Simpson try to rap. So it was really a trial to wait for Barbara's turn. So she finally gets on stage and talks about being a good family woman and so on. I pull out my smartphone and use its projector app, along with a homemade projector box I built at work so that it could make a nice big image on the close behind wall. 10 seconds of Barbara telling us where she was, what date it was, how delicious ecstasy is, what a cuck her boyfriend is, and oh God, fa kami, Mikey. Nice and loud. Thanks, bazooka speaker. The audience is so stunned, I have time to loop the video and play it again. Barbara is standing there with her mouth open, eyes wide. Someone in the crowd yells out in Chinese, "Hey, that's Mike." Everyone knows Mike, especially a lot of the ladies. Just as the crowd is starting to reach a crescendo, I grab my speaker and projector box, stuff them into the backpack, and slip out a side door where Kay is waiting with her car running. Before I made this getaway, I made sure to shout out, "This is not a place for you, Barbara. You go now. Bye-bye." I then went to Kay's house, and we were so happy we got engaged. By that weekend, I was packed up and moving with Kay to stay with her uncle who lived in a big house near my new school where I am now finishing my degree. Kay is now a full RN. She brings most of the money, but soon I'll play a bigger role too. From what my aunt tells me, Barbara and her boyfriend broke up. And by broke up, I mean she fled the city because he literally wants to kill her. She lost her bid for city council, obviously. Thanks to an anonymous tip, her bordello apartments were also shut down. Because of Barbara's shame, lots of her relatives who owned businesses thanks to my dad lost customers, and a few have already gone out of business. The rest are failing fast. My dad's old house fell into foreclosure, and now a nice white family lives there. They're the only white people on the block, so Godspeed, round eyes. Barbara's porn.gif made the rounds on tons of people's Facebooks before it got deleted because of community guidelines. Mike shared this trailer all over the internet to people he knows, and in our neighborhood, everyone knows one another. Since it was only a few seconds, lots of people also posted it to their Instagram before it got deleted. Barbara's life is pretty much nuked. The full-length version got posted to various pay sites, but it hasn't leaked to any free streaming services. This is according to Mike. Never misses an opportunity to make some cash. "Hey yo, Dad, I forgive you for not leaving me that much other than showing me how to be strong and to stand up for myself. That was the best inheritance of all. See you in heaven unless this stunt make me for hell instead."